Well, we're back again, and we're still continuing our idea work from our worksheet that I showed you recently. And this is how we have to go down and address all of these ideas and then make notes to ourselves as we go along, so we can actually explain our work. Whatever comes out in our planning work, we can explain it to others and confer with others as we go along. Critiquing each other's work and being constructive about it is a very important part of getting feedback in the visual arts. Now remember, this is just our working page, and this is still part one. We're working out some of the layout ideas for our project before we commit to these ideas on a larger piece of paper and then set about drawing and coloring them. So we're probably going to use the entire session this time, and maybe a portion of the next session to try to finish this up and then start laying out our large project. So there's a few things that we've got to address on this, and I've already taken care of one of them, and that was the description of these things. And so I've already got my initials in there, and I made mine kind of like the U.S. flag, where the star field is in the upper left hand corner, which kind of indicates that's the most important part, the joining together of all the various states. And so, you know, this is my initials, and so I chose to put them in the upper left hand corner, much like the United States flag is. Now I think I'm going to go try to figure out how to put my interest, my 8 interest, and also my birth and zodiac stuff in here today. And so if I got 8 interest, how am I going to arrange those 8 interests so that they're visually interesting to look at, and furthermore so that they appear to look like a flag instead of just a bunch of stickers that are pasted onto the artwork. And so I'm going to go about attempting to do that through a little bit of geometry, I think. I've seen a lot of flags that have got like a circle of stars on them, or circles, a number of stars, various things on them. But I do like that idea. And so if I can make a circle with 8 little circles in it, then I think that would be a neat way to use my compass, and also a way to lay out my picture so that I can start getting an idea where I've got to go with, you know, where I'll place my birth and zodiac. Well, I've already got my birth date done too, so there we go. Hey, I'm going to underline some of this as I go along here. So I've already got my birth date, I've already got my initials, see? So these things are starting to work out. Right now I'm working on my 8 interests. So this guide really keeps you on track and keeps you from having to, you know, sit there and contemplate constantly what it is we're trying to do. Alright, so if I've got 8 interests that I have to somehow figure out a method for organizing them, and if I take this compass, and I'm going to pretty much, I guess I'll just set it right here, because I'll bet that this distance right here is too much if I were to make an arc with it. Yeah, that's too much. So what I really need to do is find the shortest arc, and that would probably be like right here. Now if this overlaps just a bit, that's okay too, because an overlap is really visually very attractive. I might even just do it on purpose now that I've kind of thought about it. Now that ain't going to work either. So what is the shortest? It must be down here then. This must be the shortest arc. No, it's not right either. So how is it not the same on the top and the bottom? That's an odd thing to... So then that means that this must be the shortest arc. Okay, we'll try it one more time here. So there we go. Okay, now that one fits all the way inside of the circle. Now I'm drawing this lightly because I'm going to erase a great deal of it later. Okay, so that's odd. That will be closer to the top there than it is here. So what that indicates to me also is I probably need to move this down a bit. But I do like the center of the arc being in this. Well, I'm going to go with it. because can't spend a great deal of time. I may fix that in the actual finished piece of work. So I'm going to erase all of this stray markings here. That would be a distraction to me, of course. People may not find it that distracting, but I surely would. Okay, and because of that now, I don't have my overlap, and that kind of bums me out, but maybe we'll be able to fix it up so we do have an overlap. Okay, now my problem here is I've got a circle, and I want to display my 8 interests in it. So what I'm going to do is try to make 8 markings. Okay, so I want 1 and 2, and then since I centered up on this, I know that this is 3 and 4, and then I may have to maybe. Okay, so I've got my 4 markings there. I'm going to just put a dot to represent those. It's much better, easier to see on the demonstration here. Okay, now that gives me 4. So I need to estimate pretty accurately into the middle of those. You could measure it if you're really uptight about it. You could measure it often. I would recommend centimeters, I suppose. And then I'd have to measure it like this. So I would call that right on the money at 12 centimeters. So at 6 centimeters, you could make a mark like right here. And that would be the dead middle of it all. Should be. Alright, so, but I think I can act, now I'm thinking too much about measuring, so I am going to measure it, although you can probably estimate it accurately. If that's 12, then this would be 6, it could be somewhere about right here. And then the same thing over here. I think I can estimate that pretty accurately. It looks like it's about right there. Let's see how accurate the estimation was. That's 12. Here's actually 6. I didn't believe it. I guess that's why you should measure sometimes. It's funny that it shows up right on that line. So I estimate pretty well, but that was at least a 1/16 of an inch off. Okay, so I've got these. I need 1 more. I better measure it. So once again, it looks like it's 12. So that means 6, strangely, is not landing on the stripe this time. So I may have to work out some more of my problems there. Okay, now what we've got now is we should have 8 markings. If we start here, call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that takes care of where I'm going to position my 8 interests at. And if I can do that with a compass or a smaller, let's see how big a circle this would make. So if I'm going to take this outer dot on the compass, although we may have to make this smaller in this case. And I'm going to just kind of experiment with it. If I put one there, and then if I do the same thing here, okay, this might work out. So I put it on the dot, and as long as they're not touching each other and they have a uniform distance apart, then it's going to be okay. Now see, this is not quite uniform distance. I'm going to fake it a bit, but that should probably, sometimes that messes everything up, so sometimes it's not the wisest idea. Where is that dot? Okay, I'll fake it a little bit. Ah, that looks pretty good. Okay, same thing. If you use your compass, or you just get a pattern of some sort, or you make a pattern of your own, or find a lid that perhaps is appropriately sized, because remember, this is not the completed size of the project, and so we're simply working out ideas right now in this. I'll just keep on working around the circle, and I like the circle of circles. See, that's kind of interesting visually, at least as far as I'm concerned. And it comes together pretty quickly too here. So I've got places to. Once you get the layout of it done, see, that is a great deal of the project, figuring out how you're going to put it all together so that it looks good. And then, you know, the content we'll go into that. So we have 8 different circles here right now. I'm going to go back and I guess bold these up a little bit so that they stand out a little bit better, at least on the demonstration. Now you should really, I guess maybe I won't. I'll just darken them. Okay, so, and I need to do a little bit of, so I've got my 8 interests there. And so you have to kind of start laying out ideas that are important to you. Now I'm going to erase the stuff that passes through the circles. But I will probably keep anything that doesn't pass through the circle. And I might put a circle in the middle of all of this too. Who knows? But see, we've got all this space over here that needs to be dealt with. And so we're going to have to use the space effectively, but we also want it to look attractive as well. Now, that's pretty good. Now, I could probably get away with making another circle centered up on this, and maybe join my stripes together a little bit, maybe with a broader stripe, so like this. Make sure you're using the same part of the circle, the same part of the compass, and holding it down firmly. If it skids, you'll get other things. Now you can be coming up with your own idea for how you organize these things. I'm not suggesting that you should be following precisely what I'm doing. This is just my own idea if I were making my own artwork out. But as you can see, I'm spending a great deal of time doing the planning. If you do that, you're going to find that you make a better piece of artwork in the end. Planning is a huge part of what you're supposed to be doing as you're learning to make art. I like that. The circle's all connected by a circle, and that means now I can erase out even more of this obscured work. So any markings that are obscured by the circle can be erased, but that's not that many of them right here maybe. So I'm able to put that extra little mark in there, that circle inside a circle, a concentric circle as it's called. And I think that added a great deal to it. Now the question is, do we keep this little marking up there? We'll wait for later. We'll determine that at a later time. So I'm not going to come up with real symbols today for what I'm doing, but I do have my 8 interests blocked out there, and I kind of have a very good idea what I'm going to do with them when I start drawing in little symbols that represent each of my interests. And one of my interests, of course, is making, is my marriage, my relationship. In fact, probably that's the one that's closest to me, but I'll put it at the top. So I'll say my relationship. Or, in fact, I won't even say that, I'll just say marriage. And that's usually got 2 interlocking rings in it. So I'm going to say marriage. But it would, these are your 8 interests that are important to you. And in a marriage, usually it's 2 interlocking rings. And so I'll come back to that when I do the finished work. But that's always a good way to represent that. And then on the also important to me is stuff like creative activities that are such as music. And that could be represented simply by a musical note right now. And then let's see, what else would be important to me? The visual arts, that would be, and that's also my career. And so, that a lot of times is represented by a painting palette. You might be familiar with one of these. And it's got, colors on it and some paint brushes and stuff like that in there. So my painting palette, and then beyond that, let's say over here I'm interested in, what would be, another interest of mine. I'm interested in learning things, learning new things, and that is, so I'm going to call that education. And education is important to me, and that's usually symbolized by a lamp or a candle of some sort or another. And so in this case, I'm going to, traditionally, it's a lamp that has a flame coming out of it. So I will represent that myself as, you know, and this is not the finished drawing, of course. It's just a, and there's usually a flame coming out of that, such as this. Okay, so, and let's see what else is important to me. See, these are difficult things to come up with sometimes when you're asking yourself. Taking care of my family, which would be myself, my wife, my sister, and my mother. So somehow I would have to come up with an example of a family. And that could be something such as just, you know, that would be, that's a good question. But I would put maybe a picture of, you know, my family members or something in there, like it's a family picture, you know what I'm saying? And then maybe other, you know, members of the family, the kids in front there, maybe another member of the family back here. You know, like if you were taking a picture at a family reunion or something such as that, what you might see there. So family would be a good one too. You know, my military background is also something that's really important to me as well. So just simply writing that in there, and maybe thinking of some things like a, you know, a chevron, which is a soldier's stripe. And there's other things I could use as well in there, but that would be a good start there. And then let's see, what else would be important to me as well. Taking care of my house seems to be a really, really important part of what I do. So I think I'm just going to draw a picture of my house, or a house, representing how much work goes into being an owner of a home. Okay. And then lastly, I like to go on vacations, and my favorite place to go on a vacation is to a beach somewhere. And so I think I would just represent this as, like, you know, the sand right here, the horizon with the water in it, and the sun coming up, you know, or going down, a sunset or a sunrise at the beach. You know, and all of this would be just the water and the sky, and this would be the reflection of the sun on the water. Well, actually, it would be kind of wavy, wouldn't it, like that, because it's the water. And this would be the beach I'm laying on, and the end of my beach towel right there. So that would be a good one too. So that's pretty important things that give us a good place to start, at least for me. You have to come up with your own 8 ideas, okay, and then we'll move on from that. Now, let's see, what else we got here. We're going to put a little window in that door right there, okay, and so we got the 8 interest, and I've got my birth date, and I've laid out, so this is already working for me as well here. So I've already got my 8 interest figured out, and it has less than 2 class periods here, or less than 2 sessions. So now I can move on and look at something else I've got here. Maybe the sign of the Zodiac. That's a good one too. And some of these symbols are really, really interesting for the signs of the Zodiac, so you will need to get onto your computer and search those out. You just put in your birthday and sign of the Zodiac, and it will show you all kinds of stuff. So, since this is my birthday over here anyway, my sign of the Zodiac probably should go below that. Now I've got the circles and I've got the blockiness going on here, so maybe I should kind of think of something a little bit more unusual to put into this particular space. And maybe I could mimic this curved material right here, and let's see what we could do with that. See if I were to bring this down. I'm going to try to travel down here with this a little bit. Let's see what happens. So I make that mark. Oh, now I'm looking at, I'm starting to get some perspective starting to happen here too. And if I were to maybe shoot off this area right here, and let's see, I might not go all the way to the bottom of the paper there. This is starting to give me some ideas. So this curve right here, I'm going to make a curved mark that kind of mimics it. And see, I'm just making this up as I go along, as I get ideas, and that's the whole purpose here of doing your layout work. And if you spend a couple days doing that, it will sure make the rest of the project go much faster. Now I do like this idea. I also would like to maybe make this curved about the same curvation until it touches just the bottom of the picture here. Okay, and the same thing here. So it should, I'm trying to mimic that curve. It looks like I'm going to have to curve it up a little bit more to get precisely what I want here. Okay, not that I absolutely know at this point in time what I really want, but I think I'm getting an idea. Now, here we go. Now I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking right now is that this reminds me of a shield a bit. So if I were to bring this down, let's estimate about halfway across the top or of this, and then we curve it up kind of like this. I'm going to put another curved portion down like this. So now I'm starting to get an idea. It's starting to look a little bit more kind of official, like a flag or a logo of some sort or another. Okay, that's not bad at all. And I can dust that off so I can see what I'm doing there. Now this is taking up a lot of space and it's very blocky, so if I were to use my ruler and go from that point I just made down to about right here, it gives me something to aim at. And furthermore, I'm going to estimate about this distance. I think is a good distance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this into something that looks a little more symbolic. I'm going to curve that like this. And I want to take this out of here. So see, when you're just noodling around with your pencil, that's when you come up with ideas that really help you start to develop what you're thinking about, your project. Okay, same thing over here. I'm going to try to match this curve if I can, as best I can. Now remember, this is just idea work right now. It's not the actual piece of artwork, but it's important to get it figured out before we start on the real thing. And yours may look much different than mine, or you may choose to use the exact same setup that I'm using, and I'm okay with that. If you are interested in doing that, then you can follow right along with this video, and you just simply put in content that is relevant to you, rather than, you know, the content that I'm putting in. What's important to me, it would be what's important to you. Okay, now, yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so it looks like it was meant to be that way, doesn't it? So we've got my initials, my birth date, my 8 interests laid out there, with just little rough sketches about what they might be, but that gives you some place to get started with when you have to come up with a complex piece of artwork like what you all will be doing. So I'm going to dust that. That's looking pretty good. So now what I want to do is I need to put into this my symbol of the Zodiac. And my symbol for the Zodiac, and I don't know why I'm getting all this flashing on my piece of it's because that little piece of artwork goes up and down there and it changes the lighting. Isn't that odd? So I'm going to tape it down so it can't misbehave anymore. And that'll keep that from happening, I'm hoping. Well, then what's up with this? Why is it happening now? And I think it's got to do with every time I pass my hand in front of it also. See, it's reflecting more light. So, well, we'll tape it down anyway. And, okay, just to make sure, because I don't like the way it's flashing around there. Alright, now, here we go again. So, we're going to, my idea here is, I like the way that this looks, but I'm going to put a little interesting border on it here. So I'm going to kind of just outline on the inside of this shield. And then it will give me a little place to put my Zodiac symbol. Now my Zodiac symbol is a Gemini, and I just happen to know what my symbol is, and a Gemini is from Greek mythology, and the Gemini twins were hatched from an egg, strangely, and one of them was named Castor, and the other was named Pollux. One of them was a great warrior, while the other was a poet and an artist. So it's odd that the Gemini twins are artist and poet, and also the other twin is a warrior. So it's an odd combination between the two individuals, and they were very good friends as well as brothers and twins. And when one of them died, the other was so bereft with grief that the gods put them together again as a constellation in the skies, according to Greek mythology. And so I think that's kind of interesting. And I think it's also interesting that I'm a Gemini, and I spent a great deal of my early career and early life as a military officer, but I also am an artist as well. So that's kind of something to think about, isn't it? Okay, so I think I might even just write that in here, in that little curve underneath this. Although you don't really want to, constantly actually spell it out for people, okay? That's it, They should be able to, with some examination of your work, figure out what they're looking at, okay? So you don't always have to literally spell it out for them, okay? Now, in the real product, I would move that over so it was a little bit more attractive in that space. And it's funny because this line passes this way, but I think I'm going to try to pass a line in the other direction. So I'm kind of about from here, I guess, would be a good angle. I'll put a little dot there. I'm going to go up to that corner. I'm going to put a line that passes behind it all, right in there. So that's what I'm going to emphasize when I do the real project. I might even make it a stripe. Why not? But see, this is where I'm starting to get maybe too complicated, right? Because if I get too complicated, then the finished work may never get done. And that is a real problem. So it's one of the things I've always had to kind of dial myself back on, is the complexity of the work I make. And it's easy to end up stuck if you do that. Alright, well, let's look back at the worksheet again. Here I am. Got my initials, I got my 8 interest, I got my birth date, I got my zodiac. Now it's funny, for my embellishments, I'm going to take things off of my interest and use them. And I think what I would do with this is make like The vacation, I like that a lot because that is reminds me of the beach, and so if I were to maybe block these off like this and this border and make waves, you know, and that would be a nice, you know, reminds me of my big, you know, maybe I'll take the 4 things that are most important in my interest, and I will use those as embellishments. And that would be probably a pretty good way to go about this. And so I seem to be producing this quickly, and I have done this a lot, and so I've got ideas about what I'm trying to do. It may take you a little bit longer to do that. As far as music goes, I could actually put a lot of lines along the side, and it would look better if I did it along the top, but with music notes in them. So what I'm saying is like a musical staff, and then put music notes on that. And those music notes could actually spell something out if I do it right. So that's probably what I'll do up here. And then maybe my something about the military down this side right here. See? And so I'm going to call that mill. And then over here, I guess I'm going to have to take something like my marriage would have to be an important thing over here. So that would just be like interlocking rings all the way down this side right here. So by doing that, I've already come up with my ideas for my embellishments, see? So I can mark off another thing here. And mine have actually got a meaning to them. So it looks like really all I've got to come up with is something about my culture, my country, my state, and ethnicity, you know, where I am descended from, what kind of people were my ancestors, and where are they from, and I have a lot of potential background to work on there, and so that would be something I'm going to have to think about. So I'm going to put music up here at the top of that to let me know what these are, and the military down there, and this is my, I'm going to say marriage. And that's important, a vacation down here by the waves. Tell you what, I really am working on getting on a vacation. I could really use one. This e-learning and planning videos is more complicated than I had anticipated. Alright, let's see, what have we got left to think about? Just the culture, country, state, and ethnicity. So, I've always lived in the United States, but I am from Ohio, and my family is from Louisiana on my father's side, and Tennessee on my mother's side. So how to represent that is could be kind of complicated here. Although if I were to use what's inside of this circle, that might work for me as, for instance, the Ohio flag has got 17 stars. It's got a notch like this. And check this out. Over here where this chevron comes together, I'm going to put a little notch in that, representing the notch that's in the flag of the state of Ohio, but not touching the circle. That would be kind of maybe confusing to people. So that's going to represent the notch in the flag of the state of Ohio. So that's where I'm going to be starting out when I get back together again here, because that's the end of our session. That bell is 35 solid minutes of production time, which is a lot of production time to spend working out your ideas for a piece of artwork. And but that's a good thing. And so working out your ideas will definitely help you save time when you are making the legit project. And it looks like that might be the next session when we get back together again. That can we can probably finish the layout work, or at least I can. It may take you another class session, and if that happens, then that's okay. But you've got to stay with what we're doing here, or you will find that you are hopelessly falling behind, especially if you're working alone at home, and sometimes that's easy to do. But in this case, a lot of progress has been made in one class session. I'm going to make a note to myself that this is about Ohio, and then maybe my mother's background over here, and my father's background over here. So that'll give me something to think about for the next session. So thanks for your attention. Hope you're keeping up, making progress the same way I am, and we will finish up our layout work shortly and move on to something else.